Chapter 2. The House with the Green Wall and the Window that Lets in the Sea Breeze. Mrs. Ann opened the white door. For the first time in my life, I stepped into a real house. Not the orphanage dormitory with its rows of cold iron beds. Not the charity shelter with its smell of disinfectant. This was a house that breathed, that held memories, that bore the scratches of years on its walls. A small hallway led straight into the kitchen. The ceiling was low, but it never felt oppressive, because high above there was a half-moon window letting light down from the upper floor. The furnishings were simple but tidy. An old shoe cabinet beside the entrance, an oval mirror clouded at the edges. Beneath it, a vase of dried flowers. A fragrance drifted through the air, the scent of toasted bread, of pine wood, and a faint trace of smoke from the hearth. All of it together made a smell I would later learn to call the scent of peace. Mrs. Ann stepped in first, took off her gray wool coat and hung it on the hook by the door. Then she turned back, smiling, waiting for me to follow. Her slippers made no sound on the wooden floor. I tried to walk the same way, but my old sneakers squeaked with every step, and I felt utterly clumsy. She said nothing, only, "Stand still. I'll show you around." On the left of the hallway was her room. The white door stood ajar, and through the gap I caught a glimpse of a small wooden bed, a black and white photograph on the headboard, and beside it a work table with an old sewing machine. She told me that this was the room she had lived in since her wedding day, until now, when her husband was gone and her son had never returned from the war. I fell silent. I had never had parents, so I didn't know what it meant to lose someone you loved. But I understood emptiness. It was like the bunk beds in the orphanage. There was always someone beside you, but no one truly belonged to you. On the right were the library and the sitting room. She opened the door so I could look inside. The library was small, but its shelves rose almost to the ceiling, packed with old leather-bound books. A maroon armchair sat beside a reading lamp with a floral fabric shade. Next door, the sitting room held a small sofa, a brick fireplace, and on the wall a painting of a seascape. She said, "This house hasn't had guests in a long time. I rarely sit in the parlor myself, but it's still here. Every room should have a place to welcome people." Then she pointed up the wooden staircase. "Your room is upstairs." The stairs were narrow, each step creaking underfoot. Along the wall, family photographs hung close together. A young man with red hair like Mrs. Ann's, wearing a military uniform, smiling. Beside him, an elderly woman with silver hair and kind eyes, probably her mother. Then another photograph. A younger Mrs. Ann standing in front of this very house, holding a baby in her arms, her son. I paused a long time in front of the last picture, though I didn't want to seem nosy. Mrs. Ann stood behind me and said softly, "That's my boy. He died at 23. I've kept his room exactly as it was, only locked. But the one next to it, the room at the far end, that will be yours, if you find it suitable." When she opened that white door, the room appeared before me like a Christmas card from my own imagination. It was small, just enough for a bed pushed against the wall, a desk pressed against the opposite wall, a 3-drawer wooden wardrobe, and a little chest at the foot of the bed for odds and ends. 2 glass windows, one facing the square, the other looking into the backyard and beyond, to the distant orange rooftops shimmering under the street lamps. The bed was white, the sheets were white, the pillow was white, a whiteness so pristine it seemed no one had ever lain there. I set my bag down beside the wardrobe, my hands trembling. I didn't dare open the wardrobe to see inside, nor did I dare sit on the bed, afraid of spoiling something so new and so beautiful. I only stood in the middle of the room, turning slowly, letting my eyes touch every corner. Mrs. Ann leaned against the door. Go wash up and rest. Tomorrow morning, wake early. I'll show you where the market is, where the bus station is. Tonight, there's no need to rush. She went back down the stairs, her footsteps fading. I closed the door softly, as if it were made of glass. I took off my worn shoes and placed them neatly by the door. I took off my thin jacket, folded it carefully, and laid it on the chest. And finally, I allowed myself to sit in the bed. The mattress was not too soft, as if it had been made only to wait for me. I lay flat, arms at my sides, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. Above me hung a small chandelier with frosted glass shades, reflecting the warm yellow light from the hallway. From below, I could hear Mrs. Ann doing the dishes, water running in the kitchen, and then an old song rising from the radio. A slow, melodic tune, a waltz from the 1940s. I closed my eyes. A feeling I had never known washed over me. Not joy, not happiness, something deeper, quieter, like after a storm, when you suddenly realize you are still alive and the sky is clear. I thought of the orphanage, of the nights I lay listening to younger children cry for their mothers, even though none of them knew their mothers. I remembered that I had once cried like that. Then, one day, I forgot how to cry. Then, one day, I no longer wanted to cry. I only wanted to grow older, strong enough, so I would never again have to lie in a communal room with 20 other children, to have a bed of my own, a wardrobe of my own, a window I could look out of without being scared. I sat up, walked to the window, and looked out at the square. Half the street lamps had already gone dark. Only a few holes